Well, I just want to say, so as our good friend, my good friend, has said, I will give some preliminary remarks, an overall overview, and then I hope we could spend most of our time having a question and answer, having a direct conversation, because I'm eager to listen to your questions and learn from you as well, and explore topics of interest. So I just want to say what an extraordinary honor it is to be here. This office, which I'm visiting today for the first time, is a testament to what NDA has achieved in a short period of time and under very difficult circumstances. It is an honor to represent NDA in Washington for a few years now, and it's really been something in which I not only feel like a lobbyist, but a fellow comrade, a fellow brother, part of the NDA family and the Armenian family. As many of you know, I have a Greek background, and that was always an incentive for me getting involved, because I feel that Greeks and Armenians were fellow brothers and sisters. So it's been just a tremendous pleasure to be involved in your cause. You have such great people. When I first helped bring Colonel Gerasoulis to Washington, it was a life-changing experience for me, and all the NDA leaders and council members, Gerasoulis, Arapapian, Vahe Gasparian, all these tremendous people are extraordinarily impressive individuals. And I have to say, I think we should all be proud of the people that we have representing us in the NDA and what we've done. And I think what we've done in Washington is a testament to the leadership and the vision of NDA and the cause of NDA, which is one that I believe in having a free, independent, and sovereign Armenia, and one that is pro-Western, which is also in the interests of the United States. But NDA is the first really Armenian interest to engage in a systemic advocacy in Washington, D.C. through a professional lobbying firm. There have been engagements in the past through diaspora groups in the United States, but those have mainly been focused on the genocide issue. With NDA, this is the first time that you've really had political figures in Armenia engaging directly in Washington about U.S.-Armenia relations, about security, and other issues pertaining to the Republic of Armenia. This has really never been done before. Even if you look at the past 30 years, the amount of times that leaders in the Armenian government have even visited Washington is very few. So what NDA has done in the past less than 2 years has been revolutionary. We've built many alliances and relations in Washington with congressmen and senators, many of whom now support NDA and the NDA message. I've received many positive messages from U.S. officials about what NDA stands for, and we've taken the message to the highest level. And now I think we're in the coming months to come, we're going to see more and more the fruits of our efforts, because again, this is the first time that we've been engaging in an endeavor of this nature. Many of the members of Congress we met with were generally familiar with Armenia, but just from the genocide point of view. Most of the people who we met with told us they never had anyone approach them to talk about U.S.-Armenia relations or security in Armenia or these sorts of issues. So for many of these officials, this is the first time that they're being introduced to this more nuanced message. And so we've had to put in a lot of effort to reduce the knowledge gap within Congress and the administration and the policy and decision makers here in Washington. But now we've worked very hard at that the past 2 years, and I think now we're going to see a lot of results coming out of this. There's some very specific issues that I know you care about that I've received messages about from NDA supporters. For example, the issue of Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe, and the fact that their coverage has been problematic, shall we say. That's an issue that members of Congress know about, and that's an issue they're working on, and I'm hoping we'll come to a solution to that in the coming months. It'll take a little bit of time because we're dealing with a U.S. government bureaucracy, but that issue is being addressed, and I'm confident that we could solve that. Also, of course, issues of police brutality by the Armenian government. We want to make sure that our government here in the United States deters the Pashinyan regime from engaging in any sort of violence or police brutality against anti-government protesters, whether they be NDA supporters or other people as well. The Armenian government under Pashinyan should not be engaging in authoritarian tactics, which unfortunately they are. And we've, I think, tried to dispel what I believe is the myth of the so-called reformist Pashinyan. Many people are now beginning to realize that this is nonsensical, frankly. Whatever he's been selling. So we have specific issues that we're trying to resolve and that we're targeting, and I'm hopeful for. And I think now we have an opportunity with the new Congress, the new administration. There's an opening now where we could have significant changes in State Department policy and administration policy, and we're currently engaging in influencing those policies. So I think there's enormous opportunity these next few months to, I think, move things in a direction that we want to see. And it's something I'm hopeful about, especially in conversations that we've had very recently. I've brought Vahe Gasparian and Ara Papian to Washington, and we had a very successful visit with senators and Congress people, right before the inauguration of now the new administration. So I know Armenia is under a very challenging time, but I think with the leadership of NDA and good people like yourself, we can provide a corrective, and we could be the solution to all of these problems that we're facing, and try to do something constructive. And I just want to say, it's been an honor to be in your presence. I made so many friends. Also, I want to give a special shout out to my partner in Washington, Dr. David Gregorian. I would be remiss for not mentioning or highlighting him. He's been in many ways your unofficial ambassador, if you will, in Washington. He's someone who helps manage our lobbying efforts. He's the one who works with our lobbying firm and myself on a day-to-day basis. And he's someone who cares so passionately.
Behind the doors.
David and I are, 11 o'clock at night on having phone calls about, okay, what are we going to do here? And, he cares so much, and he's put in so much work. And he was critical in making this happen. And, I'll be honest with you, a lot of people, when NDA first established this, were shocked, because there's never been a situation previously where an Armenian interest group has ever hired a lobbying firm. NDA was the first one to do it. So this has really shocked a lot of people, and I think NDA has created a revolution and how things are done in Washington. And I know because of what we've done, it's caused huge conversations even within the broader Armenian community in terms of, hey, should we approach Washington differently? Should we do things differently now that we see what NDA is doing? So, beyond just the issues within Armenia, I think what we're doing is also having broader repercussions, even here in the Armenian American diaspora, as to, hey, should we rethink the way that we're approaching issues in Washington, have new approaches, be more creative, and so forth. So, again, I just want to say what an honor it is to be a part of your cause. It's so exciting to see so many of you, many of whom I've communicated with for some time on social media, but never seen in person. So it's an honor to meet all of you, and I look forward to meeting many more of you in the future. And I'd be delighted to have a conversation and take any questions and so forth. So thank you again.
Thank you, Elias. Okay, let's move to question section. If anyone needs to translation, be free. You can ask question in Armenian, and translation will be just feel free to ask any.
Yeah. In your opinion, what was the reason for declassifying the State Department's document about Merli?
Well, we've just spoken about that. I've not had the chance to thoroughly research that, so I want to study that before making an opinion. I've not had the chance to.
Yeah, basically they declassified the documents about what transpired between Turkish government, Armenian government, and the United States government, and it was a secret document. And suddenly, a week ago or something like that, just came out. They declassified that document. Now it's obvious that they were lying. Kocharyan was lying, Oskanian was lying, everyone was lying.
Right. So what I would say is, again, I'm just being honest. I've not had the chance to carefully study that, and I want to give you an informed opinion. What I will say is this: we have a new administration. There are changes, unlike what we've seen before, in terms of there are mass resignations within the State Department and within other government agencies. And that's not a bad thing. That could become a very good thing for us in terms of, because a lot of the old school State Department officials, for example, some of them are pro-Turkic, some of them have kind of an old school mentality. If we have new blood, I think that could be very beneficial to us. And we're trying to be, provide our input. So what I would say is, regardless of whatever the motivations for the release of that document, and I really want to study that more carefully, I think the administration is reviewing their foreign policy goals for all countries, and they're currently in the process of reviewing what their policy should be. And so, considering we're in the very early stages of the Trump administration, I believe they're still thinking about what their policy towards Armenia and the Caucasus should be, and we want to try to influence their thinking on that policy. So that's what I would say to them.
Other questions?
Once again, I would like to welcome you and thank you for all your efforts that you put in for our cause. And I would like to know if you try to work with Trump administrations and if you talk to them about senators and Congress people, what are their views about Pashinyan regime, and what they think in general? Who's Pashinyan? Is he a reliable partner, or what are their, what do you understand from that meetings about their views?
Right. What I would say is we want to work very closely with the Trump administration. Many of the officials in the areas that would cover Armenia, which would be in the State Department's Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs, those officials have not been appointed yet. So it's empty, but we're working closely with many members of Congress who have a lot of influence vis-a-vis President Trump. So we're working very closely with members of Congress that have influence over President Trump. And I'm also in preliminary contact with some senior State Department officials. What I would say is, I think there's at least an open mind with the people, with the new administration. I'm not sure if they have an opinion yet, frankly. And I think that could come to our advantage because we can provide them a new set of facts. I think, unfortunately, I'm now being very frank, with some of the previous officials, many of whom have now resigned with the new administration, some of them, I think, officials, working in the U.S. Embassy in Yerevan, and also some of the people in our State Department, again, who are leaving, and I think it's that's a positive, unfortunately fell for the Pashinyan propaganda in 2018 that he was a reformist and trying to do something positive. So unfortunately, some of the previous officials in the Biden administration were fooled by this whatever propaganda that Pashinyan was trying to propagate. But I think things will be completely different now. We're going to have a completely new team, and I think we can persuade them as to what the reality is. So I'm very optimistic about having a new perspective amongst State Department officials and other relevant agencies, National Security Council, towards what is Pashinyan. So I don't think, to be honest, I don't think they have a fully set view, but that's good. It's better to have a tabula rasa than give them that view. Yeah, we're going to give them the view. So that's my answer. We're going to give them the view, and it's better to have someone who's tabula rasa, where they're flexible, they're open, you can persuade them, versus they have a viewpoint that's totally wrong, right? So I'm optimistic for what we can achieve in the coming months with the new administration. Yeah, my friend.
Again, we welcome you. You are the most welcome person in our community, Elias.
Thank you.
We know each other for a long time. My question is, because Trump just elected and is not predictable his future the way, political way. My question is how is gonna react, or how is gonna do about dictators in the world, because he has some proposals about world construction, all that stuff. Armenia right now is surrendered by dictatorship countries, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Russia, and also the prime minister of Armenia also is dictator. So, in your opinion, how is that is going to affect further political line of Trump if he start, let's say, fight for dictatorship around the world?
Right.
What
Well,
your opinion?
yeah. Well, again, I think there's that X factor, if you will, with President Trump. But I think, the fact that he's someone who is unusual in the sense of getting involved in terms of some of these personal decisions, and someone who believes in interpersonal interactions, it could work to our benefit, again, if we try to influence him in the right direction. And even in the case of President Erdogan, I remember when there was the issue of Pastor Brunson, President Trump told him directly, "I'll destroy your economy if you don't release Pastor Brunson." And the pastor was released very shortly. So I think if the right arguments can be given to Trump, that he could be persuaded to go in the right direction. And again, I know that looking at some of of his former tweets, the president has some interest, especially because the president is surrounded by a lot of the people in the evangelical community, Christian community, Armenia being one of the oldest Christian civilizations. I think there's a lot of sympathy amongst the people around Trump who are viewing Armenia in the context of ancient Christianity and preserving that piece of ancient Christianity in the Middle East. And so I think if we can influence the advisors around Trump, I was told in my meetings in Congress that a lot of the people around Vice President Vance are also very sympathetic to Armenia from the point of view of preserving Christianity in the Middle East. So I think, if we can influence Trump in the right direction, the fact that he is willing to deal on an interpersonal level with some of these dictators could be to our advantage, in the sense of he could just pick up the phone to Erdogan or to Aliyev and tell them, "Hey, knock it off, or else I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to you." So we just need to make sure that the president has the right information that we will be providing, and working closely with his advisors to push him in the direction of using the leverage he has with these other leaders in a positive way. So that's what I would say to that. Also, what I would say too is personnel is policy, and I think he's picked some very good people that I think will be sympathetic. So, for example, in the case of Marco Rubio, the new Secretary of State, he's been someone who's had a history of being very pro-Armenia, pro-Greece, pro-Cyprus, very critical of Turkey. Similar for Mike Waltz, the congressman who's now the National Security Advisor. So you have the factor of President Trump, but you also have the people that he's picking in key positions. And I think the fact that we have Secretary of State Rubio, in particular, who's had such a vocal history of being pro-Armenia and pro-Greece, pro-Cyprus, and being critical of Erdogan, I think that works to our advantage. And having people like that could also influence the way that Trump approaches things as well. So,
I will continue with
Yes.
the question. Biden last year recognized the Armenian genocide. In your opinion, is Trump is going to continue to keep that in force? Let's say, like you said, Rubio, some pro-Armenian officials is going to be around Trump. Is that position is not going to change, or at least not change?
Yeah, I think the issue of the Armenian genocide, it's a done deal. It's been recognized by Congress. It's been recognized by the president. There's no reason for a president to reverse that. No, I think we'll have a different context this time, because when we had the conflict in 2020, I think Azerbaijan did this strategically. It was in the middle of an election campaign, and so there was a distraction. So we don't have that factor this time, and I think with the new administration, their focus is putting an end to a lot of these global conflicts. The war in Ukraine, the war in Israel. I think if you look at it solely from the point of view of political self-advantage, I think President Trump and the administration will be annoyed if Azerbaijan or Turkey tries to create a new conflict when they're trying to put out these other conflicts. So I think there's also political incentive from the point of the administration to deter aggression by Turkey and Azerbaijan, and we need to make sure we're aligned with that self-interest to show, hey, there's a mutual self-interest where having the U.S. deter Turkey and Azerbaijan is both good for U.S. interests and good for your interests. But also, too, we need to promote NDA and make sure NDA continues to rise within the Armenian polity, within the Armenian political space, because the issue in Armenia is if you have the commander-in-chief in Pashinyan who's not even willing to defend his own country, it creates an issue.
He's enemy.
Enemy of any Armenian. That's exactly it. So I think that the key is to have hopefully NDA continue to rise, because ultimately you need a leadership in Armenia who's willing to defend Armenia, and then other countries can then back that. If you have a situation where you have an Armenian government who's not even willing to defend the country, it puts also the U.S. in a strange position of being more pro-Armenian, right, than the Armenian government itself. So we need to have a new leadership in Armenia as well. And I think with NDA coming to power, many problems will be solved. And NDA, I think, a future of Armenia with NDA, I think the future of relations between the U.S. and Armenia will be limitless. So.
That is only way. As we are talking around President Trump, just he will hear from closest persons and from his representative in Yerevan. So my question related to the Security Council within White House. There is such institute, right? So how is important their voice? I mean, voice of this Security Council, and exactly pro-Pashinyan position by U.S. ambassador in Yerevan. I think that creates very difficulty. So one ear will hear from this Security Council. It's good, Rubio, Congress, etc. But closest persons, direct related person, in my understanding, Security Council within U.S. White House, and his direct representative in Armenia, which is absolutely, I'm sure that she is pro-Pashinyan. He is acting against the U.S. values and interests. That is, there's many facts of that.
Right. So to answer your question, the National Security Council is very important. It coordinates with all the other agencies, including the State Department, in formulating foreign policy. And the National Security Council and having the support of the National Security Council, or NSC for short, will be very critical in addition to support from our State Department. I think on a positive note, to go to your point regarding the issues of some of the recent U.S. ambassadors to Armenia and Yerevan, including the current ambassador, Kavian, is that right now with the Trump administration, they're really trying to completely overhaul the State Department. There have been significant resignations within the State Department, and all State Department personnel are being reviewed. And so it will, let me put it this way, it will not surprise me if the administration decides to find a new ambassador to be the U.S. ambassador to Armenia. I'll just leave it like that. So it will not surprise me.
That's very important point, Elias, because I worked previously in Armenia with many U.S. agencies, and they are acting in a very strange way, because they are funding. I'm very happy that President Trump put a stop, 90 days, on this supporting by USAID, etc. for every country's USAID programs, because sometimes they are funding the programs which is absolutely not important, not significant, but from the public population of that countries, viewing that these organizations are like pro-Western or etc., which is absolutely wrong. So now should be, in my understanding, a new administration should have review everything. started from ambassador till the programs, funding, because no any results for these millions of dollars that goes to Armenia, Georgia, etc. But the results is not going to the interest of solving problems, because if we are talking about USAID, for example, that Agency for Development, a lot of programs working against losing money against these countries, and very happy really. Previously I worked with these all agencies, and very happy that now all these processes according to your explanation is going to be reviewed, and any support should be fully goes to the interest effect on the key points, key targets of national interest of each country, including Armenia.
One of the big issues, and by the way, just to make it clear, I work in a very bipartisan manner. The Armenian issue is a bipartisan issue where we have supports from both Republicans and Democrats. So, none of the things I'm saying here are and shouldn't be construed in any ways partisan statements. I'm just providing analysis based off of my experience. What I would say is this: one of the issues which has hurt NDA that I'm very confident will be solved, and this is something that I've been very blunt about, frankly, with U.S. officials, is unfortunately, I think one of the challenges that we've had with the State Department under the Biden administration specifically is the institutionalization of risk aversion within the department, which I think, based off of conversations I've had with members of the incoming team, will be reversed. What do I mean by this? If you look in the case of Armenia, for example, before the Biden administration and earlier ambassadors, whether you're talking about, back in the day of Ambassador Evans or Ambassador Yovanovitch in Armenia, the U.S. ambassador in Armenia used to meet with all, not just the Armenian government, but all the political parties within Armenia. That started to change, under the Biden administration, where it got to the point where the U.S. ambassador in Armenia would only meet with the Pashinyan government or with NGOs. Now, unfortunately, NDA has been a casualty of this. But what I wanted to make clear is that this is not just specific to Armenia. This is, throughout the world, where it seems like under the previous administration they adopted a policy of we'll only deal on a government-to-government level. So I've received a lot of complaints from other political players in other parts of the world about that. So, for example, to be very honest with you, when we were raising this issue in our meetings in Washington about the lack of engagement with the U.S. Embassy in Armenia, we would hear from members of Congress saying, "Oh, you're talking about this issue with NDA." We've heard the exact same problem with the pro-Western parties in Georgia, where the U.S. Embassy in Georgia and the State Department doesn't want to talk to any of the pro-Western political parties in Georgia. They only want to talk to the official government, and they stop talking to any of the political parties. And then after things went totally disastrous with Ivanishvili, only then did they reverse their policy. Now they're saying they're supporting the pro-West movement in Georgia. So I think it's important to note that it's not that the previous State Department was singling out NDA. This was more of a systemic issue of having this risk-averse policy, which I think was a foolish policy of let's not talk to anyone other than official governments. I think with the new administration, given conversations I think that'll be reversed completely. So I think
that is not only related with the NDA.
What do you think the problem is?
But because with this kind of risk, I think, as I said, it's risk aversion. So the thinking is, well, to be safe, let's only talk to certain people. If we talk to too many people, then maybe, it jeopardizes things. As in my career as a diplomat, again, it doesn't. To me, it's not logical. Your job as a diplomat is to talk to as many people. So to me, it's kind of nonsensical. But that was my understanding, but I think I'm very confident that will be reversed. And especially, this is a key point that we've been driving in our meetings with members of Congress. And, any member of Congress we've talked to said, "Oh, Elias, this is completely ridiculous." So I think with the support we have in Congress, and I think with this new policy and the changes within the policies of the State Department, I think I'm hopeful in the coming months that we'll see a change, that this issue of lacking of engagement with the U.S. Embassy, with the State Department, I think those issues will be fixed. And especially we have highlighted this issue to top members of Congress, and they agree with us, and they've been working with us on this. So I just want you to know that we're aware of this issue. We're addressing this issue. I think this issue will be solved in the coming months. So.
Good to hear.
Do you think that was the reason that what happened in Georgia, that they didn't talk to people, pro-Western people, and during the last election, pro-government people, pro-Russian people got 53%?
Yeah, that's exactly part of the issue, where they very foolishly, had this mindset of, oh, let's not get our hands dirty, and we're not going to talk to, and any opposition political party. We'll only talk to the Georgian Dream government. And then, of course, that created an opening. I think if the U.S. government had been more proactive, had open channels of communications with the pro-Western parties in Georgia, I think things could have turned out differently. Again, nothing's a guarantee, but it would have been helpful. It would have been very helpful. So, and that's the argument that I've been trying to make here is, listen, and we've said this to top members of Congress, regardless of, whatever people's thoughts are on Pashinyan, the U.S. government needs contingency plans, right? You never know what can happen. You need relations with the pro-Western party on the ground. NDA is the biggest pro-Western party. If you have no relations outside the Pashinyan government, and let's say the Pashinyan government collapses, it's going to open the way for maybe Kocharyan or one of those other people to come back. So it's very stupid to not have, even if you want to have on a government-to-government level, some level of communication with Pashinyan, okay. Well, then have that same level of relationship with NDA. And if, let's say Pashinyan, who has, 10% popularity or less, if he eventually goes down, we have a relationship with great people. They could come in. Versus you don't have relations with anyone, and then Kocharyan Serge, or whatever, another puppet comes in, takes over the situation, and then all of a sudden you as the U.S. government will be saying, oh, how did we let this happen? Well, it's because you haven't been, developing the relationships with people who want to have relationships with you. So I think a lot of this is common sense, and we're trying to bring some common sense into our diplomacy here. And I know it can be frustrating, but I'm confident we'll get there because we're determined. So we're not taking, no for an answer. We're going to continue to hit them until we get what we want.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Elias, would it be great if you reach those people and say, you know what, if you want to have some kind of presence in that region of the world, you need to work quickly and think quickly, because KGB doesn't wait. They're very active, but what's America
And
does,
sneaky.
they're slowing down. And see what's happening now. They're bringing another person from KGB to replace Nicole. And what is America does? They don't do anything.
We have another question here.
Hi, Elias. Welcome. Welcome here to Glendale, Los Angeles. I'm representing Armenian Youth Alliance.
Oh, yes.
Here.
Yes, yeah.
I have several questions. Actually, as you know, like Pashinyan is changing his position on genocide and other issues. Like he's not talking about Artsakh, he's not talking about genocide anymore. Do you think like this changes the position of U.S. officials regarding those issues when he speaks like that, or they have the same opinion? And what's are we going to have hearings about Artsakh and repatriation of Artsakh population back to Artsakh, and forcing Azerbaijan to protect, to give them independence and join them to Armenia? What's your opinion about that?
Thank you. What I would say to your question, it's interesting. I was asked previous question similar previously. Is that Pashinyan's genocide denialism is not going to change the opinion of the U.S. government. If anything, I think it makes him look bad to both our government and, of course, to his own people. I think he looks to be a prime minister of Armenia and to deny the genocide of your own people. I mean, it makes him look completely ridiculous, frankly. In fact, I've had some, not to give a specific name, but some U.S. officials did confide in me that they know for a fact that some of the reason Pashinyan does some of these things is that he's been given advice by Erdogan, the Turkish government, and he's taking that advice, including on things that the U.S. officials are not happy about. So what I understand from U.S. government officials, for example, is Pashinyan government decided to recognize Palestine, which upset some of the pro-Israel people in our government. And what I understood from our government officials was that Pashinyan did this on the encouragement of the Turkish government to have Armenia recognize.
Just after a few hours after this stupid recognition, Erdogan publicly said that was a result of my conversation. So you can provide this information, share with the congressman or high-level officials that is direct instruction by Erdogan.
Right. So
After a few hours.
So the point being also too, I think a lot of people try to, the opponents of NDA try to attack NDA, say, oh, what you're saying is conspiracy or this or that. I've been told by U.S. government officials that hey, Pashinyan's taken advice from is being advised by Erdogan and taking a lot of the advice. So to say that Pashinyan is not being influenced by, Pashinyan is being influenced not just by Russia but also by Turkey. I mean this is just a fact.
On that note, Mr. Gerasoulis, we had a question here that you're lobbying over there. Everybody knows you that you work for Armenia, and the question was, you come across a lot of other lobbyists, lobbyists for Turkey and Azerbaijan. Do they try to approach you? Do they try to, what is their relation with you?
Well, there isn't a relation with me, but I know who they are, and here's why our lobbying effort is so important, right? If we're not in the room talking to the congressman or senator, the congressman or senator is then going to be listening to the Azeri lobbyists or the Turkish lobbyists. So for example, to give you an example, when earlier this month when I was escorting Ambassador Arapapian and Vahe Gasparian in the capital, we were taking a coffee break in the cafeteria. And in the cafeteria, a few seats behind us was one of the top lobbyists of Azerbaijan. Wow. So it's like, so while we're working, they're working. And sometimes when we met with members of Congress, they told us, oh, I'm glad that you're giving us your point of view. The Azeri embassy just met with us a few days ago and they're telling us this or that or the other. So if we're not there to counter the message with our correct information, these members of Congress are going to be receiving all sorts of nonsense from the other side.
They work on a government level.
Yes.
Right, and the thing is, again, yes, you do have diaspora groups, and we want the diaspora to be engaged. But again, a lot of the focus, and this is not a criticism, I'm just saying this as from a factual point of view, has been on the genocide issue, which again I know is an important issue, but that's completely separate from bilateral relations between the U.S. and Republic of Armenia or issues pertaining to the security of Armenia, genocide issue is a separate issue. So, we're the main force on the Hill, talking about the situation within Armenia itself, security pertaining to Armenia, U.S.-Armenia relations. I mean, we're the main people. Yeah.
On that point, I'm concerned related to the presence of in Washington a representative of Turkish lobby, Karopalyan. Do you know him or not?
Yeah, I know who he is.
He's an active.
I know who he is.
Especially, he is not Palyan. He's Paylan. I'm not sure that even he is Armenian or not. But he's actively working. One or 2 months ago, he was here in Los Angeles. He acted, I don't know which community. He is trying to push Pashinyan's interest. And yesterday or the day before, I saw his speaking or meetings in Washington. He's actively, Turkish lobbying is actively using this guy as an Armenian. I'm not sure he's Armenian because they gave a floor him to speak in Turkish at Mejlis, and that shows like he's pushing Armenian interests. But actually, Turkish lobby using this manipulation to push Armenian interest in Washington. So that is also a significant point for your consideration. I am sure that behind him, standing Turkish, he's living in Turkey. That is fact. So they can use in any way to open doors, windows, and go to inside. That is affect on the minds. So
I would say I'm aware of who he is, but I don't think we should not be too concerned about him. I'll just put it that way.
But anyway, it's affecting on a manner because, for example, in diaspora, a lot of newspapers they are publishing that Karapalyan had a meetings. I'm sure 100% is acting under pro-Pashinyan.
Right. So one thing I want to say, and on a very positive way, we put in a lot of work. We've built a lot of support at many different levels, especially within Congress. No one has heard the message that we've been delivering before. That, in terms of pro-Western movement in Armenia, security of Armenia, U.S.-Armenian relations, we're the first ones to deliver this message. We've built a lot, I would say, a broad base of support. And, Pashinyan's only, frankly, support has been a small amount of some people in the State Department, as well as the U.S. Embassy in Armenia. Once he loses that, and he's going to lose that very quickly, he really has nothing. And we're going to be the ones that has the advantage because we have all the support in Congress. We're going to have the support, I think, with our efforts of the new State Department, hopefully, whoever happens to be the new ambassador in Armenia. So we're going to, diplomatically, I think, within a period of time, we're going to be the ones that actually has the advantage because Pashinyan overall, and sometimes, again, I know there's a tendency to just focus on, let's say, the U.S. ambassador in Armenia. But again, you have this broad infrastructure, 535 members of Congress, the think tank community. Pashinyan's really... He's really not I don't mean to be condescending. He's really not an influential force in Washington. It's only this very few people that he clings on to, like the U.S. Embassy in Armenia. So once he loses that, then we have a huge advantage over him. So I think it's going to look, we have a very bright future ahead of us in that respect.
So my question is kind of to follow up with previous questions and the previous discussion regarding that Pashinyan, he is, so right now he's in there and, we have all these other, the countries, enemy states next to us. And then the US government is right now working with Pashinyan. But the problem is whenever, the time comes and we want NDA, we want pro-Western organization like NDA to be in power. For that time, we need to work towards that, and U.S. government needs to work, U.S. administration needs to work towards that. The problem is that now with all the, limited access to media, actually the NDA in Armenia doesn't even have access to any, public media. There is no enough audience for a lot of people in Armenia, especially in, regions, in, villages, they don't even know because NDA doesn't have as much, resources to reach out to everyone.
Yeah.
So my question is, and I'm trying to, draw parallels, like if, US government has allies and they don't have to be, governments or like, for example, Kurds, the US is not helping only, like political or diplomatical. They also help, financially and military. Like, is there any possibility that the administration might help NDA financially or in some other ways? Because obviously, right now, even if they help, Nikol Pashinyan, Nikol is not going to do anything. We want pro-Armenian,
Right. So my answer to you is, so partly to reiterate what I said previously, then to answer the other part of your question. I think part of the media issue can be solved in terms of when we resolve this issue with Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe, Voice of America. The U.S. officials are now aware of this issue. They're working on it. I'm confident that will be solved eventually. Again, and again, that's also more of a systemic issue, because when we're talking with members of Congress, they informed us that there have been systemic issues in terms of radio liberty, Radio Free Europe, beyond Armenia. And in fact, I remember one member of Congress, I won't mention the name, had said there had been an issue of pro-Russians and some other people infiltrating Radio Free Europe in countries beyond Armenia, and other countries too. So there's a broader systemic issue. I think once that issue is solved, at least when it comes to the branch in Armenia specifically, I think it's pronounced Azazatun, right? If I'm pronouncing it, I think that will help. But I welcome any ideas that you have in terms of beyond, let's say those entities providing coverage on NDA. What else can be done to promote NDA in the Armenia media space? So I welcome thoughts you have on that. In terms of financial support, the U.S. government in the past has supported opposition parties and figures, but that's usually something that's not discussed openly. So it is a possibility, but that's something that would not be advertised if that were to be the case. I'll put it that way.
So I have a question. Okay. So I know you were here yesterday having some meetings. Is there a way you can tell us something about yesterday's meeting, how productive it was?
Oh, yeah. Yesterday I had the chance to see a good friend of mine, Congressman Daryl Issa. He's been a good friend to NDA and the Armenian American community. And in fact, earlier this month, when we brought Ara Papian and Vahe Gasparian to Washington, Congressman Issa was one of the people that met with them, and he's been helpful to NDA, and he's also on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the vice chair of the committee, very influential. So that's what I mean, that we've put in a lot of work to develop a lot of friendships with influential members of Congress, and those members of Congress are people who talk directly to Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, President Trump. And oftentimes when we talk to members of Congress, they tell us, hey, next time we see Marco Rubio, we'll say something about NDA, or so we are, through these engagements, passing along messages to very high levels. So it was a productive dinner engagement, and we hope to continue to bring in more and more members of Congress, into our issues. And also, by the way, on that point too, and I discussed this with Aaron, I know we've discussed this with the Armenian Youth Alliance. One of the things I would like to do more of, and I'm sure, again, we'll work on this, is, to have a little bit more of the grassroots engagement. So let's say if we're working with members of Congress, let's say that represent California, we've also had the opportunity to meet with, Senator Adam Schiff. He's someone who's a very close friend of my partner, Congressman Jim Moran, and I've had the opportunity to meet him, and we've engaged with him on our issues. So, one of the things I would like to do is if we could, have NDA supporters here in the state of California. Let's say if we meet with them in Washington, maybe you guys could meet with the member of Congress or their district director here in the state of California. So I think if we can, connect our lobbying with some more grassroots activism, I think that could be helpful, because when members of Congress meet with people who are constituents who they represent, and those constituents also say, hey, we're here, we vote for you, we support you, we're members of your community, and we also support NDA, it further strengthens, our argument as well. When they know, oh yeah, they're also, it's not just Elias saying, oh, this NDA is a great thing, but also my own constituents as a congressperson are saying, something similar. So
also the content also is important here. We meet some staff of congressmen here, even Armenians, they are in their mind only considered on the genocide issue. Even when they are hearing new ideas, about future of Armenia, even for Armenians, the staff who is working within their staff is new. So let's work on that on the ground, let's say, to meet with the congressmen, to create new links that will help you in DC as well.
Yeah, and that's actually what RSIT is very important, right? Because so many members of Congress that we met have told us, wow, we're surprised that we're meeting with an Armenian group that's not talking to us only about the genocide issue. So it's important that members of Congress also meet with members of the Armenian community who are going to talk to them about something else other than the genocide issue. We're going to talk to them about the situation in Armenia. That's why your involvement and your activism is very important, because they're so used to a certain type of conversation. That's actually very shocking to have other types of conversations. So that's also very important for them to meet members of the community such as yourself who have a different perspective or who are bringing in a different angle.
I have a question is related to my previous little bit, because after Trump administration was elected, there was another election in dictator's country, Belarus. Lukashenko, is elected as a president. My question: do you have any information? How reacted this new administration about this illegal election in Belarus?
Yeah, I think there's just a broad opposition to the dictatorship in Belarus. I don't see any reason for a change in policy towards Lukashenko. Now, when it comes to the issue of Ukraine, I think there's still a formulation of what the policy will be, but many people are pleasantly surprised to see that President Trump and the administration are still keeping a tough line on Russia on that issue. But we'll have to see how that evolves. That's something that's still being formulated, but I don't see why there should be any change as to the policy towards Belarus.
I'm asking because next year is going to be election in Armenia, God forbid.
No, we don't have such long time.
So,
We need
yeah,
to
so today's position of the administration, Lukashenko dictator election, is going to affect next elections in the same dictatorship.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, and also to touch upon a point that Armand made, but I'll add a different nuance there. One of the things that I've been, again, very forthright with in talking with members of Congress or U.S., one of the things that members of Congress ask me is, oh, when will the next elections be, right? And what I try to explain to them is, Armenia has not had a history of free and fair elections. Most of the elections in Armenia have been fraudulent. If you look at, let's say, Serge or Robert Kocharyan, they've had a history of buying votes or doing all sorts of things. And so, the U.S. needs to have a much more nuanced view. The issue is not going to be solved if, another election is held and it's held in the same way that the previous elections have been held. So, that's another point that I try to make, that, the U.S. has a role to play in terms of, making sure that there aren't a continuation fraudulent elections in Armenia, and if the U.S. is interested in having genuine pro-Western parties come to power, they're going to have to, I think creatively about how we could go about that. Or if they prefer to have elections, then they need to be involved in terms of making sure that the elections are not fraudulent. You can't have from what I understand, for example, Pashinyan has his friends on these election commissions. How could you possibly have a free and fair election if, you have your friends who are, in charge of these commissions and so forth? So that's something I also make clear, when the topic of elections comes up in our conversations, that the U.S. officials understand that. Again, and not that we're against elections, but if there are elections, they have to be free, fair, and transparent. You can't have another rigged election like so many that there have been in Armenia. So.
Dear Elias, so I know in Washington you've been working on many fronts, many challenging issues, but have you had the chance, you and Mr. Arapapian, have you guys had the chance to introduce the more bigger issues to anyone that you've met? And I'm referring to things like, the legal borders of Armenia, Treaty of Sever, and, the bigger issues that NDA stands for.
Right. So we have raised those points, but in a very succinct way where it's understandable for the member of Congress. We have raised the broader issues, but we've packaged it in a way that we think the congressperson will understand and be sympathetic to. Because when you're talking about the issues, and Ambassador Pompey, I think, is a genius. I mean, he's written so many books on the Arbitral Award and the treaties, and he's the foremost expert on the issue. But when you're meeting with, let's say, a member of Congress or a U.S. official, you can't go into 1-hour dissertation on the legalese of those topics, because then they'll get confused and they'll get lost. So we do bring up those points, but in a very we simplify it. I'm just being honest with you. Otherwise, it's gonna get lost and it's gonna be confusing. So we do bring up the broader issues, to your point, but we do so in a way where we can easily sell it. But it's important that they have the broader context, and we do bring up that broader context. Especially, it's relevant because of the frankly nonsense that Prime Minister Pashinyan is trying to do in terms of giving away Armenian territory and whatever activities he's trying to engage in. So we do bring up the broader context, yes.
And to those guys who brought it. So those congressmen or even other people that you introduced it to, how shocked were they when they first heard about it? Were they like, is this really true? Or I want to know about their reaction.
Yeah, shocked. Because I don't think anyone we've met with has ever heard of any of this, frankly, from my experience. Yeah, that's true.
Because it was hidden for years.
Oh, and in fact, to go that point, we've also been involved in our activities of raising awareness. We've been involved in arranging several congressional hearings, And in fact, for one of the congressional hearings, and this is we did something a bit historic. We were invited to provide testimony, and so you had joint testimony from Ambassador Arapapian, Dr. Gregorian, and in that testimony, it talked about what you brought up, League of Nations Arbitral Award. And I think this is the first time that you've had something, at least in the congressional record, or at least in the congressional record in 100 years or
from 33, when the Armenian embassy was closed.
So we've gotten something on that topic in the congressional record, and it's officially in the congressional record. I think NDA made a post about this a few months ago.
Statement.
Yeah.
Okay, one question. Oh, sorry. Yeah, question about Iran. With the new president, we were happy that they said this new president is pro-Western. And what happened? And then we heard that there are 100,000 soldiers at the Armenian borders.
President of what?
Of Iran.
Oh, president of Iran. Okay.
What's happening now? I mean, lately, it's something different. You think the war in Israel that caused that problem, that they are away from the United States? Even they said there was a rumor that he's going to come reconcile and with America is going to reconcile with Iran and whatnot.
Well, what I would say with the Trump administration, right, if you look at their history and their current posture, the Trump administration has traditionally been very tough in Iran, right? And I don't think that's going to change. That being said, Trump has also made clear that he does not want a war with Iran. So I think Trump will have a very firm hand with Iran. I think the way that we can try to play to our advantage is, Armenia is very geostrategic. I think Armenia can have the chance to be the true bridge between East and West. Because for a long time, Turkey tried to sell this narrative of we can be the bridge between East and West. It's been a complete disaster, a complete failure. I think Armenia is in a position where it could play that role. And I think what we want to make clear to our U.S. counterparts is Armenia, under the right leadership, what we're trying to provide, can play a very helpful role to the U.S. vis-a-vis Iran in whatever way that might look like. So I think, that's what I try to highlight, especially because, the vision of NDA in terms of having the north-south access, where you can have routes going from India and the Persian Gulf through the Caucasus. That's really quite brilliant, especially as a counter to both Russia, a counter to China. And so this is something we've also talked about. And so I think NDA, Armenia under the leadership of NDA, can play a critical role for U.S. interests. Yes, Armenia is a small country, but it's an incredibly geostrategic country that could completely reorient that region and play a critical role in new transportation routes, new geostrategic architecture. So we want Armenia, under the right pro-Western leadership, to play a key role in the new geostrategic architecture of the Caucasus, of the Middle East. So that's something I try to convey.
And what's the probability that Trump's administration is going to go for that, like to take Armenia under their wing? Because you know how Trump came in so strong and saying, let's make America great again. He is primarily focusing on America. He doesn't want to have a lot of dealings with the world. So what's the probability that we understand that it's important for Armenia to be allied with the United States? What's the probability that Trump's administration will actually go for it?
Well, what I would say, I just want to add a nuance to what you said. I don't think Trump doesn't want to engage with the world. He's very engaged. It's just he wants to be careful about use of military force and getting involved in global conflicts. So I think you'll see a lot of diplomatic engagement, and I think we have a good and persuasive case for the Trump administration to be engaged in Armenia. And engagement is different. Engagement's not necessarily, okay, we want you to send American troops to Armenia. We're not asking for that. We're asking for diplomatic engagement. Yeah. So there's not going to be an issue there. It would be an issue if we were saying, we want you to get involved in a war in Armenia. But we're not asking for that. So I would say there's a reason for Trump to get involved, especially because Iran is a priority for the administration. So it's not a tough sell to say, well, you need to get involved with Armenia and bring Armenia under your wing. I think what could be helpful for our efforts, and I know it's mutually synergistic, right? On one hand, greater U.S. support for NDA can have the potential for increasing domestic support for NDA within Armenia. But at the same time, if there is a significant increase in support for NDA within Armenia, let's say if you were to have, 10,000, NDA supporters on the street, I'm being, frank with you, that could also help our selling point here, because, when the U.S. government saw these tens of thousands of pro-Western Georgians on the streets in Georgia, that helped their cause here in Washington. So it's kind of also a bit of a chicken and the egg too, in terms of, that dynamic. But
so that's like a challenge.
Yeah. So I think also whatever we can do to also increase the support for NDA within the diaspora and domestically within Armenia will help my efforts, if I'm being frank with you.
Yeah, thank you. Any more questions, guys? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for your efforts. And as a conclusion, as I suggested to learn Armenian, I will push it on that way. And I wanna give you, on behalf of our member of our board, National NDA, Varuzhan Avetisyan, wrote this book. This is not a book. This is concept. It's called Hike. Hike is Armenian name of Armenian kingdom. He's specialist from jail. He wrote that I will translate with love to my friend and partner on date and signature.
Wait. So this is.
This is
Wait, you're saying this is
program.
from
This is
Varuzhin?
from Varuzhin.
Wait, is that addressed to me?
Yeah, he signed only few books, personal, and he
Right.
wrote and he provided this, and the one I wanna give
Oh,
you
wow.
a gift.
Oh,
So
wow.
this is will push
Wow.
you to learn Armenian, but I know our team is working on translation of this. This is not a book. This is just concept, our view on Armenian future, on the future of this is
Wow.
conceptual view, and I know that in this concept, he wrote that this is addressing not to Armenians. This is addressing new future civilization. So this is from. I'm proud to give this book
Wow.
to you.
That's
so
great.
soon we will have in English this concept translation. And this is for you.
Thank you. This is a great honor for me.
This is. I'm sure that Varuzhan will be. I'm sure that India will come power in a near future, and our new prime minister will be Varuzhan Avedisyan. This is you will remember in near future that is gift from our premier minister, and I'm proud to be transfer of this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Բաժանորդագրվեք ազգային ժողովրդավարական բևեռի YouTube-յան ալիքին։